It's been 34 years since October was declared Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And while there is more open discussion about the issue and resources for survivors, it remains a big problem. One organization tirelessly working to end domestic violence is the Network Advocating Against Domestic Violence. Its executive director, Amanda Pyron, joins me now via Zoom. And Amanda, we are now 3 weeks into the no cash bail system in our courts, the result of the so-called Safety Act. Survivors, advocates like yourself say this is supposed to make things safer for DV victims. How does it do that?
Well, it listens to their own experience. You know, one of the benefits of the new system is that survivors have the opportunity to input into the system, and judges have the opportunity to do far more research and investigation and learning about the cases before they make decisions. You know, previously, under the old law, bond hearings would take about 5 to 7 seconds at most, maybe 30 seconds if it were a complicated case. And now we've got release hearings lasting, 30 minutes potentially. And when you look at survivor safety over the past 3 weeks, what you'll see is dramatic improvements. I mean, looking at a case in Madison County where there was an individual who was subject to an order of protection, was released, was in the community, and was constantly threatening and harassing his survivor. Instead of being able to buy his way out of jail when he was charged with aggravated stalking, he was held. And under the old system, that almost never would have happened. And so we've got at least one case in Madison County where we know demonstrably a survivor is safer because of the new law. In Cook, we've seen survivors come to court and say that the person who caused them harm needed to be released because she was a breadwinner and the parent to a newborn. And the victim in the case really wanted her to be able to come home and to heal and to get the help that she needed. And that was the judge's decision. And so another case where a survivor was able to give input, and it had a marked improvement on the safety and well-being of that family. And hopefully, in both cases, people are on their way to recovery.
Okay, and what do you think are the biggest obstacles facing domestic violence support groups and survivors right now?
I think it's a lack of available services. You know, our services are taxed, they're at capacity. The Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline is seeing an increase in calls year over year, week over week. We get almost just over 1,000 calls every week, and most of those calls are for housing.
And shelter space, I was just going to touch on that. Shelter space is definitely, that's something that victims or survivors are calling about, yeah?
Absolutely. 460 calls a week on average are for housing, and there simply is not enough housing in the city of Chicago. Domestic violence shelter beds are constantly full. They're constantly full in Cook County. If we are able to place a survivor in shelter, it's as far away as Aurora or Kankakee or even further. And survivors just simply aren't well served by having to move that far away to get services and resources. So we greatly need investments in the city of Chicago to make sure that when survivors are ready to leave and move to safety, when they need to flee a dangerous situation, that we have the resources available for them.
We put some statistics, thank you for that, Amanda. We put some statistics about calls to the hotline and calls about shelter on the screen while you were talking there. We are running a bit out of time, but really quickly, can you just talk about the bill that the network is behind that has to do with firearms and people facing orders of protection? What are you pushing for, but kind of keep it quick?
Yeah, well, we need to save lives, Dana, and you led in with the Morgan State mass shooting. We need to save lives in Illinois, and 60% of mass homicides are a result of domestic violence. And we've got to save lives with Karina's bill. The Senate needs to pass Karina's bill in veto session. The House passed it last session.
And that's to make sure that firearms are taken.
Guns.
Okay, I got you. Amanda Pyron, I'm sorry, we could talk for hours, but I have to thank you for being with us this morning. Again, Amanda Pyron, the executive director of the Network Advocating Against Domestic Violence. And I also want to mention tomorrow, the network's annual leadership breakfast is taking place at Venue 610 on Michigan Avenue. Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul is the keynote speaker. He'll discuss the dangerous intersection between firearms and domestic violence. That kicks off at 8 a.m.
That was a